It begins in blood, not a murder, not a war, but a high school girl, weeping in a locker room shower, as her body betrays her, and the world laughs. This is how Carrie begins. Not with death, but with shame, and in that shame, something ancient and terrible awakens. Not all monsters are born. Some are made in silence, in corners, behind locked doors. Carrie is not just a horror novel. It is a brutal meditation on what happens when cruelty meets repression, when trauma festers inside a young girl until it detonates, not just inward, but outward, devouring everyone in its path. Published in 1974, Carrie was Stephen King's first published novel. But even then, in his debut, King wasn't just writing to scare us. He was writing to reveal something about pain, about power, about how society shapes its victims, then condemns them when they push back. At its heart, Carrie is a modern tragedy, a gothic fairy tale soaked in blood and guilt, a horror story told with the bones of a high school drama. It's about the invisible weight some girls carry, the weight of being mocked, ignored, controlled, or feared. And what happens when that weight becomes unbearable, when the pressure builds, and there's nowhere left to hide, no one left to help, and nothing left to lose. Carrie White, our central figure, is no villain. She is quiet, awkward, pitiful even, raised by a fanatically religious mother who taught her to fear her own body, taught her that desire is sin, and that being female is a curse. She moves through school like a ghost, unnoticed or tormented, living in a constant state of anxiety and confusion. Her classmates mock her. Her teachers misunderstand her. Her mother cages her. And when she bleeds for the first time, she doesn't know what's happening, because no one ever told her. That moment, seared into her with shame and laughter, becomes the first crack in the dam. But that dam holds something more than rage. It holds power. You see, Carrie is not just a girl. She is the embodiment of every quiet scream, every buried tear, every desperate wish that the pain would stop, or that someone, anyone, would finally pay. And, in Carrie's case, someone does. Everyone does. Stephen King didn't set out to write a blockbuster. In fact, he threw the first draft of Carrie in the trash. It was his wife, Tabitha, who rescued it, saw its potential, and encouraged him to finish it. That small act of belief gave birth to one of the most enduring voices in American fiction. And from that spark came Carrie, a story that has endured for decades. Because it touches a nerve we all recognize. The cruelty of adolescence, the danger of repression, and the terrifying moment when someone finally breaks. Set in the small, fictional town of Chamberlain, Maine, the novel plays out like a slow-building storm. At first, it's whispers and murmurs, strange feelings, petty meanness, small injustices. But slowly, steadily, King twists the tension until we relocked inside a pressure cooker with Carrie White at its center. And when it explodes, it doesn't just destroy lives. It asks us to look at ourselves and wonder, did we help build the monster? Did we laugh too? Did we look away when we should have said something? What follows in the coming chapters is not just a horror story. It is a descent into the psychology of pain, power, and punishment. Each chapter is a step closer to the inevitable. Each moment is another brick in the wall of tragedy. And when the blood finally falls, it will not wash away guilt. It will baptize it. So lean in, listen closely. This is the story of Carrie White, and this is how the world ends. Not with a scream, but with silence, broken at last. It happens in a moment of routine, the kind of moment most people forget. A gym class, a locker room, laughter echoing against tile walls, girls undressing, toweling off, exchanging gossip, and then a scream. Not of pain, not exactly. It's a sound made of something deeper, raw, confused terror. Carrie White is 17 years old, pale-skinned, soft-voiced. Her presence barely registers in the world around her. She's the kind of girl people forget until they need someone to mock. But in this moment, As blood trickles down her leg in the shower, Carrie becomes unforgettable. Because this isn't a wound. It's her first period, and she has no idea what it is. The other girls stare, then explode into laughter. They don't understand why she's screaming, clutching at her body, begging for help. They don't realize she doesn't know what's happening. Raised in a house soaked in religious fanaticism, Carrie was never taught about menstruation, about what it means to be a woman. In her mind, this is death, a punishment from God. She's dying, and the world is laughing at her funeral. The girls begin to chant, "Plug it up! Plug it up!" They pelt her with tampons and sanitary pads like a firing squad of shame. There is no mercy in that room. No kindness, only cruelty, amplified by the pack. It's not just a prank. It's ritual humiliation. The kind of moment that carves into someone's psyche and never fades. And then something strange happens. The lights flicker, a shower head explodes. A locker door slams with unnatural force. The chaos jolts the room into silence. There's a shift in the air. Subtle, electric. Something just moved, and not with human hands. Miss Desjardins, the gym teacher, storms in. Furious, she sees Carrie curled on the floor, covered in blood and humiliation. And something inside her shifts too. For a fleeting moment, she remembers her own girlhood. The terror of that first blood. She realizes Carrie didn't know. This wasn't drama or manipulation. It was innocence betrayed. That realization sticks with her. It plants a seed of pity and guilt that will grow throughout the story. And in many ways, Miss Desjardins becomes the novel's quiet conscience. But even her compassion can't undo what just happened. Carrie is sent home. The walk is slow, sodden with shame. Her clothes still wet. She's a ghost in a small town that never really saw her. And now, they never will forget her. Her thoughts spiral inward. A storm beginning to form, unspoken and wild. At home, salvation doesn't wait. Only more punishment. Margaret White, Carrie's mother, is a woman wrapped in scripture-like armor. She is cold, domineering, and convinced that her daughter's body is a vessel of sin. When she hears about the menstruation, she doesn't comfort. She doesn't explain. She condemns to her. This blood is the mark of Eve, of wickedness. She calls Carrie a sinner, beats her with religious fury, and forces her into the prayer closet. A tiny dark chamber filled with images of suffering saints and crucified salvation. Carrie kneels in the dark, trembling. Her sobs echo off stone and icon. But beneath the shame, something else stirs. Something powerful. For the first time, Carrie feels it. A pressure, a vibration in her mind. Like the world bending at the edge of a wheel, a candle moves. A small rattle of force, barely seen. She doesn't understand it. Not yet. But she knows it's connected to the blood, to the pain, to the rage. This is the moment the door cracks open. In the days that follow, the incident spreads like wildfire, not just among the students, but across town. The high school girls, Sue Snell, Chris Hogginson, and others, are reprimanded. Mr. Chardon is furious. The principal, fumbling and distant, can't even say Carrie's name, right? "Cassie," he says. Carrie corrects him, and something on his desk flies across the room. Everyone blames Carrie for being strange. No one asks why she was never taught what menstruation is. No one asks why she's so alone. Stephen King doesn't just show us a girl being bullied. He shows us why. The ecosystem of cruelty. The way institutions fail. The way peers pile on. The way adults excuse or ignore what they don't understand. Carrie's not just bullied by girls in a locker room. She is failed by a culture that turns difference into a target. But Carrie's story isn't just one of helplessness. From the ashes of that humiliation, a transformation begins. Quiet, dangerous. This chapter lays the foundation for the central themes of the novel. Blood, as shame, as power, as prophecy. Womanhood, feared, repressed, misunderstood, isolation. The silence that builds monsters. And most of all, transformation. The slow, painful rebirth of a girl who has been crushed into invisibility. We do not yet see the full shape of the storm, but we feel the first rumble, and the truth is this: it cannot be undone, because something broke open in that locker room. Something ancient, something electric, and when Carrie White finally stands tall, the world will burn for what it did to her. Cruelty has a rhythm in high school, a subtle beat, echoed in whispers, locker doors, and hallway glances. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simmers, and in the wake of the locker room humiliation, that simmering becomes the pulse of Chamberlain High. The incident doesn't fade. It festers. What Carrie experienced in the showers was more than a prank. It was a public execution of dignity. And now, the administration is forced to respond. Mr. Chardon, furious and shaken, leads the charge. There will be punishment. Not just a slap on the wrist. She demands the girls feel it. A list is drawn up, names are written, and a new kind of pressure begins. The punishment is simple: a week of intensive after-school detention with Mr. Chardon, physical discipline, or, if they refuse, 3-day suspension and a ban from prom. And that's where the divide begins. Most of the girls accept the punishment. They're angry, annoyed, but they comply. But one girl doesn't. Chris is the kind of girl who has been told her whole life that she can get away with anything. And mostly, she is pretty popular, venomous. She doesn't just reject authority. She spits in its face. To Chris, Carrie is a joke, a punching bag, and she resents the idea that she should suffer consequences for treating her that way. So she refuses. Chris storms out, confident her father, a hyper-ord lawyer, will fix it all. And that's when something subtle shifts in the story. Because Chris isn't just a bully, she's the embodiment of unchecked entitlement. When she's told no, she doesn't reflect. She plots. And now, a dark seed is planted in her. Carrie White ruined prom for me. And that seed will soon bloom into something far more dangerous than a prank. Meanwhile, something altogether different is happening in the heart of Sue Snell. Sue was one of the girls chanting in the locker room. One of the crowd. She didn't throw the first insult, but she didn't stop it either. And now, it haunts her. She begins to feel it. Not just guilt, but shame, a deeper kind of regret. And from that regret, a strange and brave idea begins to form. She turns to her boyfriend, Tommy Ross. Kind, intelligent, steady, and makes a request that'll shock them both. I want you to take Carrie White to the prom. At first, Tommy thinks it's a joke, but Sue is serious. She wants to offer Carrie something good, something real, a chance to be seen, not as a freak, but as a girl, a human being, maybe even a queen for a night. This is not an act of pity. It's an act of atonement. And here, King does something remarkable. He shows us that, in the same school, in the same event, two entirely different narratives are taking shape. One, born of guilt and grace. Sue's need to make things right. The other, born of pride and vengeance. Chris's burning need to make someone pay. Two girls, two reactions. One seeks redemption. The other, destruction. Back at home, Carrie continues to unravel and awaken. The incident at school has changed something fundamental in her, not just socially, internally. She feels different now. When she's alone, she begins to experiment. She looks at a mirror, focuses. It trembles. She can move things. Small at first, but real. She tests it, practices. Books, brushes, doors. A power that responds to her emotions, to her will. She doesn't tell anyone. Not yet. This is her secret. And for the first time in her life, Carrie White has something of her own. Something that makes her more than a target. Something that makes her powerful. But power is a double-edged thing. It can heal, it can protect, and it can destroy. The school buzzes with talk of prom. Dresses, tuxes, limousines. It's the season of dreams. The last glittering illusion before adulthood shatters the magic. But for Carrie, prom has never been part of the picture. She's not that girl. She doesn't go to dances. She doesn't even believe she deserves them. And then Tommy Ross asks her. At first, she's suspicious. She thinks it's a trick, a trap. How could someone like him ask someone like her? It doesn't make sense. She says no. But the idea lingers. It plants a question in her. What if they're not all lying? What if, just once, someone meant it? This chapter is a study in contrast. Stephen King doesn't just show us characters reacting. He shows us characters choosing, and those choices form the axis on which the entire story will turn. Sue chooses remorse. She begins to grow, to question her place in the social order, to sacrifice her own happiness for someone else's chance at it. In a world obsessed with self-image, Sue dares to look inward, and that makes her rare. Chris, on the other hand, chooses war. She turns her own punishment into a vendetta, and because she's used to getting her way, she finds someone who can help her do it. Billy Nolan, violent boyfriend who sees Carrie, not as a person, but as a target. Together, they begin to plot, and this plot will become the dark engine that drives the novel-esque catastrophe. And Carrie, she stands at the crossroads, still humiliated, still unsure, but for the first time, something like hope begins to flicker in her. A tiny, trembling flame. She starts to imagine the impossible. That maybe, just maybe, she could be seen, not mocked, not feared, just seen. But in horror, hope is dangerous. Because when it's crushed, the fallout is not sorrow, it's rage. And Carrie White, the girl who walked like a ghost, is learning to burn. There are villains in this story, obvious ones. The girls in the locker room. Chris Hart, Billy Nolan. But none cut as deep or as quietly as Margaret White. She doesn't raise her voice like a bully. She doesn't throw fists like Billy. She doesn't have to. Her weapon is something far more insidious. Faith, sharpened into a blade and turned against her own daughter. This chapter isn't loud. It's chilling and it's quiet. A descent into the icy heart of fanaticism. We step inside Carrie's home, expecting maybe comfort or sanctuary, but we find neither. What we find is control, disguised as salvation. Margaret White sees the world not just as fallen, but as actively evil. To her, sin isn't symbolic, it's the air we breathe. Life is sin. Flesh is sin. Pleasure is a doorway to damnation. The body is a curse, and womanhood is a punishment. This isn't just her belief. It's law inside the White household, and Carrie has lived her whole life beneath its shadow. She's been kept away from boys, denied even the most basic understanding of her body, never allowed to wear modern clothes. Her mother's religion doesn't comfort it, but it doesn't teach it silences. Every question Carrie has ever dared to ask has been met with scripture, not to enlighten, but to shut her down. And in that silence, Carrie was shaped. In this chapter, Carrie comes home from school with a flicker of something. Tommy Ross invited her, and she wants to go, she tells her mother. Uncertain but sincere. She wants to wear a dress, to be normal, to feel, just for one night, like she belongs. Margaret listens in eerie stillness, her eyes distant, her fingers twitching. Then she explodes. Carrie is wicked, a whore of Babylon. Prom is painted as a den of sin, a gathering of lust and corruption. Tommy is not a kind boy offering a chance, he's a serpent, and the dance is a trap. Margaret insists this is the devil's doing, and that nothing holy can come from a place where flesh touches flesh, and music fills the air. Carrie begs. She's not defiant, she's desperate. But Margaret hears none of it. She goes for her usual method. Control through punishment. She tries to drag Carrie to the prayer closet, that small, airless space where she's locked her for hours, even days, where sins are purged through isolation and forced prayer. But this time, something shifts. Carrie fights back. It's not just emotional anymore. It's physical. When Margaret grabs her, Carrie reacts not with fists, but with force. Invisible, raw, instinctive. Her mind lashes out, and Margaret is hurled backwards not by touch, but by something far stranger. Something new. The room stills. Margaret looks up at her daughter, dazed, caught somewhere between fear and awe. And Carrie, trembling but tall, says, "You're not going to stop me. I'm going. You can't stop me." It isn't rebellion. It's transformation. Carrie isn't just resistance, she's evolving. For the first time, the balance of power in her life shifts. Margaret, once the towering voice of divine judgment, is suddenly small, uncertain, and afraid. And Carrie the Looms, becoming the lion. But this change is messy. Carrie doesn't hate her mother. She doesn't bask in power. She's still awkward, still craving love. What we witness is not vengeance. It's survival. It's the painful birth of self. Carrie doesn't want to hurt Margaret. She just wants to live. But Margaret doesn't see that. To her, this is the end. The devil is winning. The world is burning. And her own daughter is now the vessel of evil. Stephen King doesn't render Margaret White as a cartoonish villain. He paints her as deeply damaged, delusional, and terrifyingly human. Her theology is a rigid fortress built from fear and trauma. Her love, if it can be called that, a suffocating, possessive thing. A love that cages. A love that wounds. This chapter is a horror story. Within the horror story, no monsters, no blood, just a mother, a daughter, and a war for the girl's soul. And in that war, a door opens. Carrie crosses a threshold. She stands up to the only God she's ever known and survives. But in that survival, something stirs. A ripple in the air. Carrie isn't just resisting anymore. She's changing. Becoming no longer just the girl who was laughed at in the showers. No longer the girl trapped in her mother's shadow. She is something else now. And the world has no idea what it has woken. As she prepares for prom, Carrie sews her dress. It's soft pink. Handmade. No glitter. No glamour, just fabric, thread, and a quiet hope. But it's more than a dress. It's a symbol. A line drawn in the sand. A flag planted in the barren wasteland of her life. Proof that she can become more than what she's been told. That she can choose. That she can belong. But across town, Chris Hogginson is planning to, and her plan doesn't include forgiveness. It includes blood. Redemption rarely begins with grand gestures. More often, it creeps in quietly, born not of heroism, but of guilt. That's how it begins for Sue Snell. As the echo of Carrie White's sobs lingers in her memory, Sue walks the halls of Chamberlain High no longer as the confident girl in the popular crowd or as Chris Hart's accomplice, but as a young woman unraveling under the weight of shame. What happened in that locker room wasn't just cruel. It was a rupture in Sue's sense of who she believed she was. She thought she was better than that. Kinder, more compassionate, but she wasn't. And now that realization haunts her. Most teenagers would eventually shake off the guilt, brush it aside, excuse it as a momentary lapse in judgment. But Sue isn't most teenagers. She doesn't want to forget, she wants to atone. And it's from this inner turmoil that a radical, frightening idea emerges. She'll offer Carrie something no one ever has. Not pity, not scorn, but a real gesture of inclusion. A door, an invitation, a chance. She turns to her boyfriend, Tommy Ross. Tommy isn't your stereotypical high school golden boy. He writes poetry that actually means something. Honest, introspective. He's decent, thoughtful, curious about the world. Sue knows that if there is anyone who could help her carry this fragile act of redemption forward, it's Tommy. So she tells him what she wants. "I want you to take Carrie White to the prom." At first, Tommy laughs. He thinks it's a joke, some weird prank. But when he sees the seriousness on Sue's face, the conviction in her voice, his laughter fades. "I need to do this," she tells him. "Not just for her. For me." Tommy hesitates. He doesn't really know Carrie. She's little more than a ghost to him. That quiet, strange girl in the background. But he trusts Sue. And maybe, just maybe, something inside him understands the depth of what she's trying to do. So he agrees. This isn't a love triangle. It's not betrayal. Sue isn't stepping aside because she no longer loves Tommy. She is stepping aside because she believes in something bigger than herself. That if even one person treats Carrie like a human being, something sacred might emerge from all the wreckage. That's what makes Sue different. She's not trying to fix Carrie. She's trying to mend the world that broke her in the first place. Across town, Carrie receives the invitation. Tommy approaches her in the cafeteria. An almost surreal moment, suspended in uneasy silence. He asks, simply, awkwardly, "Would you go to prom with me?" Time stops. Carrie doesn't know what to do with the question. Her gut reaction is panic, fear, disbelief. It must be a trick, a setup. It always is. Her entire life, Carrie has been made the punchline. Why should this be any different? She runs, fleeing the moment, overwhelmed. Later, Mr. Jordan pulls her aside. The gym teacher has heard about Tommy's invitation, and she wants Carrie to know. It's not a prank. It's real. She should consider saying yes. Carrie is stunned. Why would someone like Tommy Ross ask her out? What could he possibly want? And Mr. Jordan, gentle and honest, says something that lands like lightning. Maybe someone finally sees you. That line stops everything, because Carrie has never been seen, watched, yes, judged, always. Mocked, punished, shunned, constantly. But truly seen, no, not once. Back home, the storm begins to churn again. Carrie tells her mother she wants to go to prom, that she's going. Margaret responds as expected, with fire, fury, and religious terror. She rants about sin, about lust, about the devil hiding behind mascara and high heels. To her, prom isn't a dance. It's damnation. She demands repentance. But Carrie doesn't scream. She doesn't cower. "You can't stop me," she says, steady and calm. Margaret slaps her, hard. But the strike doesn't land the way it used to. Carrie doesn't flinch. She stares into her mother's eyes. And for the first time, Margaret looks away. Something is different now. Her daughter is no longer hers to control. Something ancient, something powerful has awakened in Carrie. Something even older than fear. Margaret retreats into prayer. Carrie retreats into purpose. And then the sewing begins. Alone in a room, Carrie bends over pink fabric and thread. Slowly, a dress begins to form. Soft, elegant, modest, not childish, not seductive, just pure. In that quiet moment, a sense of possibility unfolds. Carrie has never worn something like this, never imagined she could, but with each stitch, she builds not just a garment, she builds hope. It's delicate, it's beautiful, and it's hers. Meanwhile, the rest of the town spins forward, caught in prom fever. Corsets, tuxes, limousines, giggles, the illusion of teenage bliss. But underneath the surface, something cruel is coiling. Chris Horgenson hasn't forgotten what Carrie cost her. She burns with the need for vengeance, and she finds a match in Billy Nolan, her dangerous, sadistic boyfriend. She doesn't lay out a plan. She just says, "I want to get her." Billy grins. "How far you want to go?" Chris smiles, and the trap begins. This chapter is the calm before the nightmare, a moment suspended between two futures, one of redemption and one of destruction. Sue's quiet act of grace, Tommy's sincerity, and Carrie's tentative hope create the chance for something beautiful. But Chris's vengeance, Billy's cruelty, and the fragile illusion of safety begin to rot that possibility from the inside. King doesn't just build tension here, he threads it with longing, with the unbearable ache of what could be. Because this isn't just a horror story, it's a tragedy. And Carrie is trying, desperately. She's trusting someone for the first time. She's letting herself dream. But in horror, dreams are dangerous. Because once they're broken, the reckoning comes. There's something sacred about making a dress, not the kind you buy off a rack mass-produced and soulless, but one sewn, by hand-stitched, by trembling stitch thread pulled tight by a girl who has never been invited, never had a reason to dream of something beautiful. In this moment, we don't just watch Carrie White create a garment, we witness her bring a vision to life, a fragile dream stitched into reality. The prom is approaching like a comet, blazing across the sky of high school life. Everyone's talking about it. The girls whisper about hairstyles and corsets. The boys argue over tuxedos. It's the same ritual year after year, predictable and loud. But for Carrie, it's something else entirely. It's a foreign language, a world she's never been allowed to enter. She has no older sister to guide her, no mother to lend advice, no friends to lean on. So she does what she's always done. She teaches herself from a library book. She learns how to measure, to cut, to pin and sew. And as her hands work, something within her begins to shift. She doesn't just imagine the night, she starts to believe in it. For the first time in her life, she lets herself envision walking into a room and not being laughed at, not being ridiculed, but being seen, being admired. The dress she chooses to make is soft pink, not white, which feels to bridal, not red, too aggressive. Pink, a color of innocence and sweetness, nearly childlike. But in Carrie's hands, it becomes more than just fabric. It becomes a symbol. Every stitch is an act of rebellion. Every thread is resistance against years of shame and silence, against a life of being told she is nothing, and that beauty is a sin. This isn't just a dress. It's her story, her freedom, her voice. Meanwhile, the outside world begins to buzz with curiosity. Whispers spread through the school. Tommy Ross asked Carrie White to prom, and she said yes. Some assume it's a cruel joke. Others think it's an act of mercy, but very few actually ask why. Except for Mrs. She watches Carrie closely, wrestling with conflicting emotions. Doubt still lingers in her mind, fear that this could all go horribly wrong. But she can't help noticing the change. Carrie walks with more purpose now. Her voice is steadier, her eyes brighter. When she smiles, Reliet lights up the air around her. There's a girl emerging from the shadows, one who has lived hidden and humiliated for so long, now daring to step into the light. Miss Tishaden starts to trust Tommy Ross, starts to believe in Sue Snell's selfless plan. Maybe, just maybe, it's working. Maybe redemption is possible. But this is horror, after all, and belief, like all tender things in horror stories, is the first step toward heartbreak. Back home, Margaret White watches her daughter's transformation with dread. Like a prophet seeing dark omens, she senses the shift. She hears the quiet hum of the sewing machine, the footsteps, the whispered lines rehearsed in the mirror. She knows Carrie is preparing to step into the world, into temptation, into what Margaret sees as damnation. The prom, to her, is no celebration. It's Sodom and Gomorrah reborn, a night of lust, dancing, and spiritual decay. She doesn't simply disapprove, she's terrified. Her warnings come sharp and fast. They'll laugh at you. He doesn't love you. God sees what you're doing. But Carrie doesn't scream or argue. Not anymore. She listens in silence, letting her mother's fury wash over her, without letting it in. She has already made up her mind. She has chosen hope, and that's the deeper tragedy of this chapter, not just Carrie's struggle, but Margaret's fear. She's not merely losing control, she's losing her daughter to the world. In her warped understanding of love, isolation is purity, containment is protection. To her, joy is dangerous, desire is sin. And if Carrie touches the world, Margaret is certain it will ruin her forever. So, she prays louder, longer. She sharpens her words like blades, quotes scripture like spells, and calls the prom the devil's playground. But what she cannot grasp is this. Carrie has already tasted freedom. And once you've glimpsed the possibility of joy, the cage, no matter how familiar, can never hold you again. Even if part of you still loves the one who built it. This chapter is a masterclass in tension. Stephen King slows everything down. He gives us space to breathe with Carrie, to sew with her, to hope with her. He teases us with a dream of what could be, a girl finding her power not through rage, but through grace. A girl discovering that she is not wicked, not hideous, not damn but worthy. And for a moment, we believe it might be possible. We want it to be. But King, ever the master of dread, leaves. Chris Hargensen and Billy Nolan are moving in the background. We catch glimpses of the pig farm. The trap is forming, unseen by Carrie. She's too busy learning how to walk in heels. Too busy wondering what Tommy might say when he sees her. Too busy dreaming. She still believes in happy endings. And that's what makes this chapter so devastating. Because Carrie's strength is real. Her growth is real. Her dress, hanging carefully by her bed, is real. But what's waiting for her at the prom is not a fairy tale. It's something darker. Something crueler. This is a chapter of metamorphosis. Carrie is no longer the trembling girl hiding in the locker room. She no longer flinches at her own reflection. For the first time, she is alive in her own skin. She finishes her dress and smooths its seams with tender care. And then she smiles. It's a quiet smile. The smile of a girl about to step into the light. And none of them, not Margaret, not Chris, not even Sue, truly understand what Carrie White is becoming. But soon, they will. It's prom night in Chamberlain, Maine. The air buzzes with anticipation, alive with laughter spilling from houses and bedrooms filled with curling irons, cologne, satin, and starch. For most of the town's teenagers, this night is a glittering finale of fairy tale, ending to their youth. But for Carrie White, it is something far more profound. It is the beginning of a dream she never believed she had the right to claim. Her dress is done soft pink, handmade, simple, and stunning. Carrie stands before the mirror in her bedroom, the light catching her bare shoulders and loosely curled hair, her skin carrying a rare glow of confidence. She is beautiful, not in a showy or dazzling way, but in a way that's deeply, achingly human. She hardly recognizes the girl staring back at her. And perhaps that's the miracle, because, for the first time, she has chosen how she wants to be seen. She has stepped out of the shadows others cast over her and into her own light. But miracles like this don't go unnoticed in the house of Margaret White. Downstairs, the air is thick with incense and dread. The Bible lies open like a wound. Margaret has been praying all day, not out of hope, but she senses the shift. She sees Carrie's transformation not as sacred, but as heresy, a girl turning toward the world, not God. And when she sees Carrie in that dress, something inside her cracks. She pleads. She weeps. She falls to her knees, chanting with wild, desperate eyes. Asterisk, they're all going to laugh at you. Her voice shakes with prophecy and terror. She warns that Carrie is walking into damnation, into a trap set by the devil himself, lured by false love and worldly glitter. But Carrie doesn't scream. She doesn't cry. She listens, quietly, patiently, and then, with a voice steady as steel, she chooses. I'm going, Mama. It isn't rebellion. It isn't hate. It's something deeper. It's freedom. Carrie walks past her mother with soft steps and no raised voice. No defiance. Just resolve. She is not storming out. She is stepping into the world for the very first time as herself. It's a breathtaking moment, heavy with beauty and dread. Because while Carrie believes, we already know what's waiting. Outside, Tommy Ross waits in his tuxedo, clean-cut and golden-haired, like a prince summoned from another world. When Carrie opens the door, he smiles. It's not pity, not mockery. It's genuine, startled admiration. You look beautiful, he says. Carrie blushes own. One has ever said that to her before. Not in 17 long years. They walk to the car together, and for a fleeting moment, everything shifts. The world turns softer. The dress, the corsage, the moonlight, it all feels like a fairy tale. But even fairy tales have wolves. The drive to the school is quiet. Tommy talks, easy and warm. Carrie answers carefully, still afraid the rug might be pulled out from under her. She is glowing, but fragile, holding joy like it might shatter if she exhales too deeply. Yet as they arrive, something unexpected greets her. Smiles, waves, acceptance. No sneers, no cruel laughter. For once, Carrie isn't invisible. She isn't a punchline. She is simply Carrie. And she has arrived. Inside the gym, the world glows. The decorations shimmer in red and gold. Music pulses, and the floor is alive with dancing shapes and youthful electricity. Carrie steps into the light, overwhelmed. This isn't her world, but Tommy is there, and he makes it feel safe. He talks with friends. He dances with her. He doesn't treat her like a joke or a project. He treats her like someone who belongs. For the first time, Carrie doesn't look down. She looks up, and she laughs. A real, bright, unguarded laugh sound of someone being born into their own life. Tommy sees it, too, and in that instant, he begins to wonder if he was wrong to come for Sue's sake. Because maybe Carrie deserves this. Maybe everyone got her wrong. Back at the White House, Margaret kneels, alone in the kitchen, rocking, whispering. She is not grieving, she is waiting. She knows what her daughter has invited in, and sin, in her world, is always punished. Her hand tightens around the knife. Back at the gym, ballots are cast. Prom king, prom queen. Carrie doesn't expect to win. But then, impossibly, she does. Her name is called. Her heart jumps. Her hands tremble. Tommy, ever gentle, leads her to the stage as applause rises around her. No mocking, no laughter, just celebration. Carrie White, prom queen. She stands beneath the spotlight, crowned and glowing, her smile small but radiant. In this single, fleeting moment, she isn't a freak or a witch or a warning. She is seen. She is chosen. She is loved. And above her and seen, the bucket waits. The rope is pulled taut. Chris Hogginson and Billy Nolan crouch in the rafters, hearts pounding, breath held. They wait. Carrie does not know. Tommy does not know. No one sees the trap, the blood, the violence, suspended above the fragile magic of this moment. It is almost unbearable, because Stephen King lets us believe. He lets her believe that the world can be kind, that people can change, that maybe, just maybe, dreams really do come true. And that, in the end, is the cruelest twist in horror. Not the blood, not the scream, but the hope, the illusion of peace, the beauty that blooms just before it dies. Carrie stands, bathed in light, wrapped in pink satin, and crowned in flowers, a queen in a kingdom that never truly wanted her. But tonight, finally, cheers for her. And just before the cord is pulled, just before the laughter returns, just before the blood rains down, King reminds us of a bitter truth. This didn't have to happen, but it will. For a moment, it's almost beautiful. The shimmering lights, the sparkling crown, the roar of applause. Carrie White stands radiant beneath the spotlight, crowned not just as prom queen, but as someone who is finally seen, accepted, loved. For a fleeting second, it feels like redemption. But above her, fate waits quietly in a rusted bucket, and then the rope yanks. A thick, warm slap of pig's blood crashes down on her scalp, sticky and violent. It streams over her face, down her neck, soaking into the delicate satin of her pink dress until it turns a grotesque, glistening red. The color of rage, of shame, of the beginning of the end. Pig's blood, the ultimate humiliation. The memory of the locker room flashes. In her mind screams, laughter, pointing fingers. The cruel menstrual shame that started it all. Now it returns like a flood, swallowing her whole. Laughter erupts. But is it real? Stephen King doesn't answer. He sharpens the moment into a blade and hands it to the reader, daring them to decide. Is the laughter real, or is it all in Carrie's mind? But to Carrie, it doesn't matter. She hears it. Loud, endless, mocking, frozen beneath the ruins of her dream. She becomes a statue, a girl crowned in horror. Around her, gasps and screams echo. Yet the only voice that rings true in Carrie's ears is her mother's. They're all going to laugh at you. It's not memory anymore. It's prophecy. Time fractures. Reality slows. In the silence between heartbeats, Carrie burns. She lets go of everything. The shy girl, the obedient daughter, the desperate longing for love. And from that scorched core, something else rises. Wrath. The gym doors slam shut with a metallic roar, sealed by her mind. Chains twist, locks melt. No one is leaving. Then the lights begin to explode, one by one, raining sparks like falling stars. Screams swell, fear igniting into chaos. Carrie walks forward, not stumbling, not sobbing, but with eerie purpose, her eyes wide, face blank, her hair drenched in blood. She says nothing, but everything around her listens. The microphone detonates in a sharp pop. Streamers ignite into flames. A crown of fire races across the ceiling, consuming the decorations meant for joy. Sprinklers hiss. But instead of salvation, they trigger disaster. Short-circuited wires snake through the wet floor. Electricity cracks. Students collapse, convulsing. Smoke curls upward. The crowd panics. People rush for exits that no longer exist. They pound on doors that won't open. Try to climb, crawl, escape. But Carrie has sealed them in. She watches them, and in each face, even the innocent ones, she sees betrayal. No one is safe from her judgment now. Everyone is guilty. Even Mr. Jardin, the only one who ever showed kindness, is not spared. Carrie sees her laughing in that cruel mental echo, warped by pain. She lifts a hand, and Desjardins flies through the air, slamming against the wall. Not dead, but broken. Carrie keeps walking. Tommy lies still beside her, slumped across the stage. The bucket that struck him sways above like a wicked bell. She doesn't look back. Love, like acceptance, was just another illusion. And now, there are no illusions left. Only fire. Only vengeance. The sound system bursts into a final howl. Before dying, the disco ball crashes down like a meteor. Glass shards raining onto the terrified crowd. A girl breaks her ankle scrambling up the bleachers. A boy punches a window, but it holds everywhere. Smoke, screams, chaos. And Carrie watches. She's inside every mind, feeling their terror, their guilt, and turns it back on them. Not out of blind rage, but with cold, righteous judgment. This isn't a prank anymore. This isn't just a girl with powers. This is biblical retribution. Outside, the town begins to feel it. Flames lick the sky. Power lines rupture. Smoke spills into the night. A neighbor sees the glow from afar. Hears the screams. But it's already too late. Inside the gym, Carrie walks, untouched, through the inferno. The blood once meant to shame her, now sanctifies her. No longer a victim. Not a freak. Not a child of pity. She is something else now. A weapon. A reckoning. And the world is finally feeling the weight of what it created. Students collapse around her, coughing, crying, convulsing. The fire consumes the walls. The doors burst open in a final explosion of heat and fury. And Carrie steps into the night. Burning, blood-soaked, reborn. Behind her, the gym, the place of her ultimate humiliation, crumbles in a storm of flame and ash. But this is not the end. It's only the beginning. She walks down silent streets, through the stunned darkness of Chamberlain, and with every step, her power grows. It hums through the wires, rattles the air, awakens something vast. Carrie is no longer a girl, not even a woman. She is a force of nature. The reckoning has begun, and the town will burn. This chapter is more than horror. It's a funeral pyre for cruelty, a searing reflection on what happens when society laughs while someone breaks. Stephen King doesn't just scare us, he indicts us, because Carrie was never the monster. The gymnasium is no longer a place of music and light. It has become a furnace, a tomb where sins are paid for in fire. What was meant to be the crowning moment of youth, the fairy tale ending of high school, has transformed into an inferno. And in its heart walks Carrie White, once a ghost among her classmates. Now the angel of vengeance, flames consume the rafters above. Bleachers crumble beneath panicked feet. Electrical wires hiss like serpents through thick, rising smoke. Carrie doesn't flee. She moves with slow, deliberate grace, her blood-soaked dress clinging to her like a second skin. Her eyes blaze with a fire brighter than the one devouring the gym. Around her, chaos reigns. Screams echo. Prayers go unanswered. Bodies fall. None are spared, because Carrie no longer believes in mercy. Outside, the night is deceptively still, the air cool and calm, until the gym doors explode outward in a blast of heat and shrieking terror. Through the smoke and ash, Carrie steps into the street. She does not limp. She does not falter. She is no longer Carrie White, the outcast girl with trembling hands and tear-filled eyes. She has been reborn, not of love or hope, but of humiliation, fire, and unchecked power. And as she walks, the town begins to feel the weight of her fury. Streetlights flicker and burst. Power grids overload and die. Homes plunge into darkness. Dogs howl into the wind. Chamberlain, Maine, holds its breath. People glance nervously out their windows, drawn to a strange light rising near the school. Smoke coils into the air. Power cuts in and out. Some call the fire department. Others call neighbors. But by the time anyone truly understands what's happening, it's already far too late. Because Carrie isn't just passing through the town. She's unleashing herself upon it. She doesn't know exactly how it works. It's not mechanical. It's instinctual. Her power flows into the wires, the metal, the very ground beneath her feet. As she walks past a fire hydrant, it bursts. A car engine ignites in flames. The bell of a nearby church tolls once, then splits in half. Her grief and rage begin reshaping the town itself. Curtains twitch. Whispers rise. People step out into the night, drawn by the scent of smoke. And in that suspended, breathless moment, they all feel it. This isn't just a fire. This is judgment. Carrie doesn't scream or make demands. She doesn't knock on doors. She simply walks, and houses collapse. In a wake, on Main Street, a group of teenagers lingers at a gas station, still buzzing from prom stories. Then the ground shudders. The pumps rattle. Inside, the clerk watches in horror as every nozzle lifts into the air. Gripped by an invisible force, they twist, then rupture. Gasoline sprays. Carrie walks past, without a glance, and the station erupts in a fireball. It turns the black sky to blazing orange. It's the first great explosion. It won't be the last. House by house, block by block, the nightmare spreads. Carrie's mind, once overwhelmed by laughter and blood, now echoes with every voice that ever mocked her. Every insult, every sideways glance, every teacher who ignored her, every neighbor who whispered about her mother, every child who avoided her in the hallway. She feels them all. And now, they will feel her. Back at the White House, Margaret waits. She has been expecting this. She sees the glow on the horizon, folds her hands in prayer. Not for deliverance, but for obliteration. She lights candles. She readies her knife. She doesn't intend to save her daughter. She intends to offer her up. Meanwhile, in the town, hysteria spreads like wildfire. People pour into the streets, shrieking, lost. The destruction is no longer just fire. It's a force. Doors blast inward. Walls shatter. Water mains erupt. Power lines whip through the air like lashing serpents. No one knows what's happening. Some shout about terrorism. Some blame the Russians. Some cry out, "It's the devil." But amid the chaos, a name begins to rise. First a whisper, then louder, then a chorus. Carrie, it's Carrie White. They remember the strange, quiet girl, the one who never fit in, the one forced to walk in the rain quoting scripture, the one who cried when boys threw rocks. They remember her pale, wide-eyed face. And now they picture her burning it all down, because now they understand. This isn't just a fire. This is a reckoning. Carrie White is not just angry. She is awakened. She has become the embodiment of everything the town tried to ignore. The bullying, the religious abuse, the rot buried beneath small-town smiles and prom corsets. Carrie isn't the anomaly. She's the consequence. At the White House, the front door creaks open. Carrie enters. The blood on her face is dry. Her dress is in tatters, scorched and clinging. Her eyes shine with heartbreak and unearthly strength. At the foot of the stairs, Margaret kneels, clutching her rosary. "I told you this would happen," she says softly. "I told you they would laugh at you." Carrie says nothing. "Let me help you," Margaret pleads, standing. "We'll pray. We'll be saved." But then she moves, fast, violent, and stabs her daughter. The knife sinks in just below the shoulder. Carrie gasps. The blade clatters to the floor. Margaret raises it again, ready to strike once more, to finish what she believes God demands. But Carrie lifts a hand, and with her mind, not a weapon, she stops her mother's heart. Margaret collapses wordlessly, still holding the rosary in her lifeless hands. Carrie sinks beside her, trembling with sobs, not just from pain, but from everything. The fire, the death, the betrayal. The girl she once was, now gone completely. In the distance, sirens wail. But there is no one left to say, this isn't just destruction. This is transformation. Carrie White has become something beyond human, beyond girl, beyond pain. She is a symbol of fury denied, of anguish unacknowledged. She is the dark answer to cruelty shrugged off. She is the flame that roars when silence can no longer bear the weight. As Chamberlain burns, smoke spiraling into the stars, Carrie walks into the heart of her final night. No longer human, no longer girl, but storm. Smoke coils into the sky like the fingers of the damned. Flames crackle across rooftops. Screams echo through the streets of Chamberlain, Maine. And in the middle of it all walks Carrie White, blood-stained, her silhouette glowing like a fallen angel. She isn't running. She isn't hiding. She's simply walking, and with every step, she leaves a scar behind. It's after midnight now, and the town is unraveling into chaos. Sirens wail, but the fire trucks can't reach the burning high school. Roads are blocked. Flames leap too fast, and the police are drowning in emergency calls. Neighbors shout over one another about explosions, missing children, fireballs in the sky, and something darker. Something impossible. They don't have words for it, but the name on every trembling lip is the same. Carrie White. She moves through the carnage like a ghost with purpose. Not lost, propelled by pain, memory, and the last flickering traces of something human inside her. Street after street falls behind her. Power lines snapping, houses catching fire. But this isn't mindless destruction. There's focus now, precision. An inner compass pointing toward the final names on her list. Because she's not done yet. Chris Hargensen and Billy Nolan are speeding away, trying to escape the nightmare. They've seen the town glowing in the distance, heard the chaos through the police scanner. Deep down, they know it's her, the girl they drenched in blood, humiliated for laughs. But what's chasing them now isn't the butt of a joke. It's something else entirely. Billy grips the wheel of his beat-up car, cigarette burning between his teeth, hands clenched. Chris sits beside him, pale and shaking, whispering, "It wasn't supposed to be like this." Over and over. A prayer, a regret. Then they see her, Carrie, standing alone in the middle of the road, surrounded by fire. Her hair hangs in wet red strands, her dress torn, arms limp at her sides, eyes glowing like embers. Billy doesn't stop, doesn't flinch. He presses harder on the gas. Chris screams, and oh, but it's too late. The car surges forward, a steel monster barreling down on a girl they still believe can be crushed under its weight. But Carrie doesn't move. She simply lifts a hand, and the world freezes. Not literally, but it feels that way. The engine stalls. The tires rise from the asphalt. The car suspends midair, twisted in an invisible grip. Metal groans. and then it flips, spinning like a toy in a tantrum. It crashes to the pavement, roof first, skidding in a storm of sparks and shrieking metal. Chris is still alive barely, trapped, upside down, sobbing. Billy isn't. His neck snapped on impact. Carrie approaches the wreckage. Chris sees her through the shattered windshield, broken and terrified. "Please," she whispers. Just one word. Soft, fragile. But it's too late for mercy. Carrie looks at the mangled car and ignites the gas line. The explosion is deafening. The flames consume what's left. Carrie doesn't watch. She turns away. Not satisfied, not vengeful, just done. She keeps walking past the burning ruins, past shattered fences and homes caving in. Families cry out in the night, begging for answers. But tonight, there are no gods in Chamberlain. Only fire, only Carrie. At the town center, the mayor stumbles out of his house, half-dressed, cell phone pressed to his ear, trying to contact the governor. The line is dead. He turns and sees her. Carrie walks through the fountain, flames swirling around her, like she commands them. "Stop," he cries. "Who are you?" But he knows, everyone knows. What looks back at him isn't rage. It's emptiness, as if the soul inside her has burned away, and all that remains is a vessel one. The one T-stop until the world understands what they created. She passes him in silence. He collapses to his knees, weeping. Carrie keeps going. Her destruction isn't random. It's deliberate, controlled. She skips a house where a child hides beneath a bed, spares a woman who once gave her a coat in 9th grade, but the others, those who laughed, those who slapped, those who looked away, feel her judgment, like a weight crushing their ribs. Windows shatter, walls buckle, pipes burst. Each wrong remembered, each cruelty returned. But Carrie is dying, too. Not yet in body, but something inside her is fading. Every time she uses her power, it eats at her. Her nerves scream. Her heart stumbles. Her mind starts to unravel. Too much pain. Too many voices. And underneath it all, like a broken record in her skull, her mother's voice loops again and again. Asterisk. They're all going to laugh at you. The words that became a curse. The curse that became truth. By the time the flames reach the town square, Carrie is on her knees. She's bleeding, shaking, exhausted. But she's not defeated. She came to make them feel what she felt. And now they do. The town will carry her name for generations in scars, in gravestones, in the smoldering wreckage where innocence used to live. The final toll, over 400 injured, nearly 200 dead, dozens still missing. Entire blocks leveled, a high school turned to ash, and one myth born, Carrie White. This isn't just a story of revenge. It's a reckoning, a consequence, the result of years of silence, cruelty, and neglect meeting a moment of unimaginable power. It is the story of a girl no one listened to until she made them hear her, with fire and fury. It asks a question written in flame. Asterisk. What if the girl you laughed at became the storm that rewrote your world? And as the town burns, as the last screams fade into smoke and ruin, Carrie White walks into the silence. Not victorious, not evil, just changed. The fire's behind her now, the screams, the smoke, the collapsing timber of a town devoured by vengeance and fear, all of it fading like the final notes of a terrible opera. And Carrie White, scorched and broken, limps home. The girl who once left in pink satin now returns barefoot and bloodstain. Her dress is nothing but charred threads, her body marked with soot and bruises. Each breath is a shallow gasp, her pulse uneven. The world feels distant, like a half-remembered dream dulled by exhaustion and pain. But she's not finished. There's one last door to open, one final reckoning, one person still waiting in the dark. Her mother. The White House stands, strangely, untouched, eerily, silent, while the rest of Chamberlain burns. Like an island of stillness in a sea of chaos, Carrie opens the door and steps inside. The air doesn't burn, it chills. It shifts, not with smoke, but with something colder. Prayer. Candlelight flickers against the walls. Scripture lines the floor like sacred traps. And in the kitchen, kneeling as though in penance or ceremony, waits Margaret White. She doesn't flinch, doesn't cry. She only looks at her daughter and says, "I told you this would happen." Then she rises. Her face is calm, radiant not with fear, but with religious conviction. To her, Carrie is no longer a daughter. She is the devil made flesh, a prophecy fulfilled, the apocalypse. Walking, Margaret approaches, her voice a whisper of scripture, a lullaby, a curse. Then the knife gleams in her hand. Carrie sees it, but she doesn't move. She's too drained, too hollow. Margaret lunges. The blade pierces Carrie's side, not deep, but enough to draw blood, to ignite her nerves with pain. She stumbles back, gasping, as her mother closes in again, eyes shining with righteous purpose. "It's not your fault," Margaret whispers. "It's mine. I should have killed you the day you were born." The words are gentle, almost loving, and that makes them all the more horrifying, because Margaret truly believes she's offering mercy. But Cara, bleeding, shaken, lifts her hand one last time, and the house responds. Cabinets fly open. Knives rise into the air. Crosses twist upside down. The walls tremble. Then, in one terrible, final moment, every blade in the kitchen drives itself into Margaret White. She gasps, outstretched in a grotesque echo of crucifixion, and collapses. Still, silent, dead, and somehow at peace. Carrie crumples beside her, her body trembling, her breathing ragged. Blood flows from her side. Her eyes shimmer with tears that blur her vision. She doesn't scream. She weeps. "Why didn't you love me?" she whispers. But the silence offers no answer. Then the house begins to die. A low groan echoes through the wall's timber, stretching. Nails ripping loose. The floor vibrates beneath her. Cracks race up the plaster. Like lightning, Carrie feels it in her bones. The house is crumbling because its center, its heart is gone. Her mother is dead. Her power is bleeding away. Her body is failing. She tries to rise, but collapses, crawling, dragging herself through the kitchen and down the hallway, past the tiles, stained with blood and memory. Photographs tumble from the walls, school portraits, saints, her father's faded face. This isn't just a collapse of wood and plaster. It's history disintegrating, memory unraveling, everything she ever was disappearing. She reaches the porch just as the ceiling caves in behind her. The sound is enormous, like the sky cracking open. She rolls, tumbles into the yard, shielding her face as the home that was her prison, her sanctuary. Her origin implodes. The ground splits. Walls cave inward, and in a single, breathless exhale of dust and ruin, it's gone. Carrie lies in the grass, bleeding and broken. Her eyes flutter, her life dimming, but in her mind, a spark still flickers. She reaches out, not with her body, but with something deeper, a psychic cry, a final flare, and someone hears it. Not a rescuer, not a savior. Sue Snell. Across town, Sue jolts awake, as if something has shattered inside her. A voice, a presence, a pulse of pain and pleading. She doesn't understand how she knows. She just knows. Carrie is calling to her, so she follows, through smoke and rubble, past sirens and chaos, drawn by something invisible and unshakable, until she finds her, curled in the grass, half dead, still glowing with that strange, tragic power. Carrie looks up, barely whispering, "You were the only one who tried." Sue kneels beside her, tears streaking her face. "I didn't know it would go like this," she sobs. Carrie believes her. She nods. They laughed. She murmurs, "I know." Carrie reaches out, touches Sue's face, and in that moment, she shows her everything. The blood, the mockery, the silence, the humiliation, the rage, the power. The aching, gnawing loneliness, not just tonight, but always. And then Carrie trembles once more, then goes still. Her hand slips from Sue's cheek. Her heart stops. Carrie White is gone. Not in rage, not in hatred, but in understanding. Because in the end, someone saw her. Someone finally saw her. This chapter isn't devastating because of fire or knives. It's devastating because it tells a truth far more painful. That the greatest tragedy is not being loved. That it's not power that destroys us. It's neglect. It's cruelty. It's silence. Carrie wasn't born a monster. She was made. Smoke still curls through the streets. Ash falls like snow. Chamberlain is in ruin. Broken glass. Toppled light poles. Bodies covered in soot. The charred bones of a once normal town. And in the middle of it all walks Sue Snell. Her face is pale. Her legs move without her permission. There is no map, no direction, only a pull, a deep psychic whisper. Like a wire has been strung from her heart to a distant signal. Come. She doesn't understand it. Not yet. All she knows is that she has to go, past the firefighters, the cops, the stunned survivors huddled in blankets, beyond the crowd, into the outskirts. Her mind isn't thinking anymore. It's listening, and somewhere ahead, like a beacon of pain in the night, is Carrie White. What started as guilt, what started as a kind of penance, bringing Carrie to the prom through Tommy, has turned into something more profound, more tragic, more final. This isn't about righting wrongs anymore. It's about witnessing the end. And then she sees her, a shape lying in the grass, at the edge of what used to be the White home. The house has collapsed into its own foundation. Just rubble and blackened beams now. And beside it, like the last leaf clinging to a scorched branch, is Carrie. Sue stumbles toward her, breath caught in her throat. Carrie is barely alive. Her chest rises shallowly. Her face is smeared with ash and blood. Her eyes flutter. But as Sue drops to her knees beside her, Carrie looks up. And in that instant, their minds touch. No words are spoken. None are needed. The connection is psychic, emotional, pure. A bridge built not from language but from suffering. And in a rush, like a flash flood of memory and pain, Sue sees everything. She sees Carrie as a child, hiding from her mother in closets, lined with Bible verses. She feels the shame of that first period, the terror, the blood, the girls laughing. She walks beside her as she tiptoes through school hallways, invisible, despised. She's there in the locker room, in the classroom, in the silence, in all the silence that swallowed Carrie whole for years. She feels the first crack of power, the thrill of possibility, the spark of hope when Tommy reached out his hand. And she sees the moment it all turned to blood. It's unbearable. Sue gasps, sobbing, because this is not just a monster. This is a girl who wanted only to be seen, to be loved, to be held by someone who didn't recoil in disgust or laugh behind their hands. Carrie didn't want to destroy the world. She only wanted to belong in it. But it's too late now. The connection begins to fade. Carrie's strength is slipping. Sue clutches her hand. It's cold, small, trembling like the last leaf before winter. Carrie looks at her, and in that final glance, says something no voice could carry. You tried. And then, she's gone. Her body her breath stops, the faint spark in her mind. That strange, terrifying light flickers out. The girl who could move mountains with a mind dies, with her head in the lap of the only person who ever tried to understand her. For a long time, Sue doesn't move. She just sits there, hands trembling, holding the shell of someone who burned too bright, too briefly. There's no one around, no sounds, but wind and crackling debris. And still, Sue feels her. Carrie lingers, not as a ghost, but as a weight, an imprint, a presence that has settled in Sue's soul like ash in her lungs. And now, Sue carries her. Carrie's story, her pain, her rage, her truth. She becomes the keeper of it, not by choice, but by fate. The one left behind, the one who must now explain the unexplained. Later, when the reporters swarm, when the news spreads like a virus, prom night, massacre, high school horror, psychic killer girl Sue will sit in a white room and try to put words to what she saw, and they won't understand. They'll want science. They'll want categories. They'll want to know what Carrie was. And Sue will try to tell them. But how do you explain that she wasn't a monster? That she was a mirror? This chapter is the still point in the storm. The last breath before the silence swallows the story whole. It reminds us, it's easy to fear the girl who burned the town, but the real tragedy is that no one held her hand before it caught fire. Carrie White dies, but she leaves behind something heavier than rubble. A question. What would have happened if we had loved her first? When the sun rises over Chamberlain, Maine, it shines not on a town, but on a wound. Black smoke curls into the sky from the ruins of smoldering buildings. Ash lies thick over lawns, blanketing the ground like a grim snowfall. Police tape coils around entire neighborhoods. Now, nothing more than the skeletal remains of homes. Charred wood, twisted wire, and broken dreams. In the unforgiving daylight, the true scale of devastation is laid bare. Craters gape where houses once stood. The school has been reduced to a blackened pit. The gym, where teenagers danced just hours ago, beneath colored lights, is now a graveyard of silence. The town is broken, shattered. Reporters descend in droves. TV vans line the streets. The nation, appalled and hungry for answers. Watch it. Headlines flash across every screen. Mass teenage death in Maine. Prom night turns deadly. Psychic girl kills 400. But the truth defies headlines. There is no script for this level of pain. No tidy label can hold the weight of what truly happened. And yet, one name rises louder than the rest. Carrie White. The world begins to dig into her yearbooks, into the memories of teachers and neighbors. Her story is pieced together in fragments, painted in parts as victim, as villain, as enigma, but no one truly understands her. No one except Sue Snell. Sue, the only witness to the truth, is called before investigators. They ask about Carrie's mental state, her abilities, her reasons, but Sue struggles to give them what they want because the truth isn't convenient. She tries to explain the aching loneliness, the cruelty that wrapped around Carrie like barbed wire, and that final night when their minds touched and she felt the terrible beauty of Carrie's pain. But no one is listening. They don't want complexity. They want a monster. Quietly, a government task force is assembled. They begin compiling data, reports of other telekinetic children, strange events, unexplained forces. A file begins to grow. Latent abilities. Public safety concern. But buried in those clinical notes is one scribbled line, easily overlooked. Asterisk, not evil, just alone. Back in Chamberlain, the survivors gather in makeshift shelters and solemn churches. Grief moves through the streets like a cold, unshakable wind. Families dig through rubble searching for heirlooms. Teachers dream of classrooms that no longer exist. Children flinch at sudden noises and flickering lights. The town is scarred not just by fire, but by revelation. A truth long buried has surfaced, and it burns. Some vow to rebuild. Others pack their bags and never look back. For decades, Chamberlain will wear its tragedy like a scar. The town that burned, the place with the girl. The soil remembers, and so do the people. And Carrie, her name becomes legend, a story whispered around campfires, a tale to frighten or warn. To some, she's a monster, the embodiment of rage unleashed. To others, she's a martyr, the girl who made vengeance holy. But to Sue, and perhaps to anyone truly willing to see, Carrie becomes something far more profound. A mirror. Carrie wasn't born to destroy. She was born to survive. In a world that never gave her a chance, she was molded by fear, shaped by ridicule, silenced by a society that pretended she didn't exist. When her power finally surfaced, it didn't create a monster. It unveiled one, not in her, but in us. This story doesn't end with an explosion. It ends with an ache. A girl is gone, a town is forever changed, and a question lingers in the smoldering silence. Asterisk. What happens when we ignore pain until it catches fire? Sue walks once more through what's left of Chamberlain. She passes the charred bones of the school, the cracked sidewalk, the empty lot where the White House once stood. No one speaks of it directly, but the truth is clear. Chamberlain will never rebuild in any true sense. Because what Carrie burned down wasn't just buildings. It was the illusion, the belief that we can be cruel without consequence, that the quiet, strange girl in the corner is just part of the background, that our mockery doesn't matter. She wasn't background noise. She was the reckoning, and now, her silence echoes louder than thunder. This final chapter is about memory, the kind that lingers long after the smoke clears. Carrie's death wasn't the conclusion of a tragic tale. It was the beginning of a question that refuses to fade, a challenge that burns beneath the surface of our culture. Asterisk. Who else are we ignoring? Who else is teetering on the edge? One cruel joke away from collapse. What do we do before the next Carrie White catches fire? In the end, Carrie isn't truly about telekinesis. Not really. It's not about the blood, the fire, or the destruction. That's just the echo left behind. What Stephen King crafted in his first published novel is a tragedy masquerading as horror, a psychological autopsy of cruelty. How it starts, how it festers, and how it devours everything when left unchecked. At its core, Carrie is about pain that goes unseen. Carrie White was never the villain. She was the spark, but the fire belonged to everyone else. To the girls in the locker room who laughed and humiliated her. To the teachers who looked the other way. To the mother who turned religion into a weapon. To a culture that treats difference as a sin. Carrie didn't appear out of nowhere. She was built, constructed from silence, from shame, from every cruel laugh she wasn't supposed to hear. But the true horror of Carrie isn't that a girl had supernatural powers. It's that no one cared until she used them. And even then, the concern wasn't for her. It was for what she might destroy. She was invisible until she wasn't. And by then, it was far too late. King's genius lies in how he takes the fantastical telekinesis and refuses to make it the story. Instead, he uses it as a lens, a way to see deeper. The powers aren't the monster. They're the response. They are what happens when a soul has been cornered for too long. When a person's desperate cries go unanswered until they erupt in seismic rage. When Carrie finally breaks, it isn't madness. It's a girl answering back in the only language the world ever taught her. Violence. There's a brutal honesty in that. Because Carrie's story isn't some rare, twisted fantasy. It's real. She exists in every school, every small town, every workplace. Maybe not with powers, but always with that same deep ache to be seen, to be loved, to belong. And she teaches us a hard truth. There is no such thing as harmless cruelty. No innocent exclusion. It all adds up. And if we don't make space for pain to be heard, it will carve space for itself. In Carrie, horror becomes a scalpel that cuts through the comfortable facade of everyday life. It exposes the quiet violence we so often ignore. The bullying, the repression, the rigid social hierarchy, the blind demand to conform. The way people turn away because it's easier than getting involved. King dares us to ask, who failed her first? Was it her mother? Her school? Her society? Or was it all of us? And then there's Sue, the witness, the almost savior, the girl who tried to do the right thing and still lost everything. Her presence is essential not as a heroine, but as a mirror, a reflection of those who wait too long to act, who discovered too late. That compassion must come before catastrophe, not after. Her guilt becomes our own. Carrie's death doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like a eulogy. And that's by design. This story isn't meant to thrill, it's meant to haunt, to linger in the corners of your mind the next time you see someone who doesn't fit in. Someone who's awkward, quiet, strange, someone labeled other, as if that word is enough to erase their humanity. The novel whispers, "You didn't listen last time. Will you now?" Carrie endures because it speaks to something ancient thaw. Terror of being powerless, the fury of being dismissed, the desperate hunger for justice when the world refuses to speak your name. Carrie White may have died in a field of ash, but what she represents lives on. She is every broken voice that ever whispered, "Why won't anyone help me?" And the chilling answer echoes back, "Because no one believed you mattered." In the end, Carrie isn't a horror story. It's a warning and a prayer, though we recognize the next Carrie before she breaks, that we love her before she burns.